which is great. That means we can get to know each other. But please let me know, am I misunderstanding the attendees list?
No,
I saw online when I joined AgilePDX, there's like 3,500 people
yes,
overall in the group.
that is true.
We used to be able to get pizza at this meeting.
See, yeah, I understand.
When it was in person, we had 75 to 100 people showing up on a regular basis. So it's dwindled a little bit since we've gone virtual, but
I'm happy we get to know each other so we can be conversational if we want to, right? We've got the right ratio of people to people where we can do that.
yes. All right. Let's see, Joe, if I set you up as a host, you should be able to present now.
Yes, I can. And actually, I've just enabled it. So I just turned on multiple participants can share. So if folks want to hijack during the presentation with obnoxious pictures or your own story, now you can. That has been turned on. I'll start until someone else shares over me. I'll start by sharing mine. What I prepped is what I was learning about doing Agile and hardware. But feel free to interrupt me anytime with any tangents. We've got the right sized group to do this conversationally. And this can even evolve into something podcast style if we break out into a conversation. But until then, I'll try to just keep sharing more and more interesting things, if I can, until I really catch someone or everyone's interest. In 2006, I started building cars with Agile methods. I founded a teeny tiny company, in the beginning it was just me, called WIKISPEED. And that company grew from my garage at that time in Denver, Colorado, to a company with more than 4,000 people in 23 countries. And in a very small niche, it made me famous. Most people have no idea who I am, right? But people who are passionate about Agile hardware say, oh, you need to talk to Joe Justice. So in this very narrow niche, I'm the person. And it's because of this project. And the reason this project started is circa 2006 was a really slow time for innovation in automobiles. And I like cars. I have this passion for mobility. I mean, I'm not the person to tune an old car and fiddle with the carburetor all morning or something, which is cool. And I respect people who do. That's not my passion. I like this feeling of mobility. It's a feeling actually in my stomach when I drive in a very alive way. I imagine it's how talented gymnasts feel. And I love it. It's part of the reason I'm alive, I think. And I'm also an environmentalist. And in 2006, those two things were opposed. There was no environmentally sound way I could enjoy motoring in a way that didn't leave the road a little worse than I got on it because of the wear, the petroleum used to make the road, the gasoline the car was using, et cetera, et cetera. So I had these conflicting passions in me that I like mobility a lot. It's visceral for me. It's in my core. And I really want to leave the planet better off, not so much worse, but better off than I arrived. So how to put those two things together? So I started a car company to try to make cars that felt good to drive. That was my angle, that were significantly more fuel efficient. And my tiny little company grew to a not so tiny company, and we set 4 world records, including the most fuel efficient thing ever to be certified road legal at the time. And that was in 2010. I got to enjoy those cars being raced head to head with less efficient, less environmentally friendly cars. I operated a race team and was co-captain of a race team in Germany. which is where the most famous, for car enthusiasts, racetrack in the world is, the Nürburgring. And as co-captain, the other captain is German, living in Mannheim. We fielded the 24 hours of Nürburgring season. So there's the 24-hour race, and then there's what's called the VLN, endurance racing season, all year long. And we won it one year. So we were absolutely at the top at one time. We're not now, but I'll get to that part of the story. But at one point we were beating Porsche, Ferrari, BMW, everybody. So we were successful. And I realized I wanted to go a lot bigger than my own hobby company. And I convinced Tesla to hire me. Now, in the meantime, in this story, I had been a Scrum Master for Bill Gates at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Seattle, just up the road from AgilePDX. I did work directly with Bill, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And I also was a contractor, software developer at Microsoft. And I worked with the leadership team at Amazon. And I worked with the co-creators of Scrum for 6 years, including proposing contributions to the Scrum guide to make it more compatible with hardware. And I got to play in Agile hardware at the absolute top level of the game. And in 2020, I joined Tesla and I operated what's called Agile at Tesla, the Agile program for Tesla. 2020 summer was a very interesting time for Tesla. It's when their stock price went up 5x. And I'm not going to say I caused the 5x stock split for Tesla. It's just not true. But I was in the company when it happened, and I got to see what it's like to be in a company that creates that type of financial improvement. For those of you that don't follow markets, that is one of the largest financial gains in the history of publicly traded companies ever. It shaped the way the world reacts to money. And I got to be operating the entire Agile program when that occurred. Most of the time I dressed like this. The picture before was taken on my birthday. I dressed up. Most of the time I dressed like this because in Tesla doing Agile hardware, there are no desk jobs. I had Agile coaches. I was an Agile coach. We had Agile trainers. I was an Agile trainer. We all built cars. We all stamped metal. We all applied industrial adhesive. We all lifted 20 kilograms multiple times a day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's one metric at Tesla, and it's advancing sustainable transport. And that's branched out into sub-metrics. And it's your only job to hit those. So no one cares how good your daily Scrum was unless it increases the rate of excellent cars. Like no one cares about anything unless you're hitting the product metrics, right? So most of the time I dressed like this. And on the left with WIKISPEED, I ultimately designed, and I shouldn't say I made, I was involved in every car we made, but a lot of people helped make 14 cars. That's the grand total. And I'm super proud of that. I was part of design, build, procurement, every aspect, crash testing, road legalization, racing. We sold several for commercial use and public use. Some people drive their kids to school in these things, 14 of them. When I was in Tesla, there's over 1 million cars made now. And I made pieces of thousands of those cars and was part of the new product introduction, the design, painting, defect rectification, robotics programming, getting robots unjammed, logistics, all kinds of stuff. And that's what it meant to operate Agile at Tesla. Along the way, I worked with Volkmar Denner, the chair and CEO of Robert Bosch GmbH. Their headquarters is in Stuttgart, Germany, but they're global, more than 100,000 employees. And I got to work directly with Volkmar on their Agile transformation. And Volkmar told me and everyone else, for Bosch, agility is crucial. It allows us to adjust to the increasing speed of change around us. Agility allows us to remain in a position as an innovation leader. What I got out of working with Volkmar is they wanted a faster pace of innovation. They wanted more innovative ideas with less approval process. They wanted to be responsible with their money, but they realized their current approval process was killing the innovation. Only the least disruptive ideas made it through to approval. Volkmar called this the Uber problem. He said, if someone in Bosch had an idea like Uber, it would never survive. Our approval process systematically kills off something that could be a risky bet, perceived as a risky bet. And so they only have slow, minor evolution, minor innovation. And that is why he wanted agility. He wanted a faster pace of innovation. And I got to work at Toyota in Toyota City in Nagoya. In fact, I lived in Tokyo for 18 months and would commute to Nagoya. And in Tokyo, the next CEO of Toyota is inside a company that's now called Woven Planet. At that time, it was called TRIAD. It's a wholly owned Toyota company. And the purpose of this company is essentially to train the next CEO of Toyota. It's like a hobby company for this person to skill up and learn how to be, they hope, an excellent leader. And Toyota is a very old-fashioned company. The next CEO is not chosen by who is objectively the best fit. The next CEO is the oldest son of the current CEO. That's how they do it. So that's how you know who it is. It's Daisuke Toyota is who's going to be the next CEO. Luckily for Toyota, Daisuke seems very talented, so it should go well. And Daisuke is armed with a board to support Daisuke that's also excellent and extremely well groomed. So they hired a CEO that had been a mid-manager or junior executive at Google. And they made that person, James Kaufman, the CEO of TRIAD, and they installed the next CEO of Toyota, Daisuke Toyota, as a rank and file employee. And then they made a super team with all these Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and people with deep Toyota expertise. And they said, what we want you to do is roll out autonomous driving. Unfortunately, they did it all with Waterfall. So they had a 5-year plan and they missed it and they missed it and they missed it again. So they brought me in to train every employee in this new company, including Daisuke Toyota and James Kaufman, how to be a Scrum Master. And I wanted to customize it, right? I didn't want it to just be, here's how to run a good daily stand-up. I wanted it to be, here's how you get a fast pace of innovation in a company that's used to 5-year planning cycles. Here's how you actually get autonomous driving with fast feedback in a safe way. And I taught that across the entire group. What I learned from the current CEO of Toyota, Akio Toyoda, is this quotation here. When you look at a product, going to the actual sites, going to Gemba. Now, Gemba is a Japanese word that means the place of manufacture, physical work. That does not mean the place it's planned or the office. Now, ideally, those are the same. Ideally, you plan at the point of manufacture. But even if you didn't, Gemba specifically means the place it's physically made. He says, what's important when you're at the physical manufacturing point, what is important is to fuel the change point. He's saying the same thing as as Volkmar Denner, the CEO of Robert Bosch. He's saying the CEO's one job is to make change faster, to accelerate innovation, faster pace of innovation. That's what they want too. So of course they're becoming more interested in what Agile experts here on the West Coast of the US really is like the breadbasket of agility. What folks like us have been doing, some of us for 25 years in one form or another, some of us for 5 years or 1 year. But in any case, this part of the world, Western US, has the deepest Agile history of any companies ever in the digital era. And they're hungry for it in companies like Toyota. They're saying, help us change faster. What we're really good at doing is minimizing variance. 6 sigma, meaning 1 defect for every 6 decimal points. That's had been the goal. Well, what is innovation? It's variance. So how do you embrace a fast pace of variance in a way that's financially responsible? So a lot of these people's questions about Agile transformation is how do we decide which project to fund? That used to be a 5-year set of offsite meetings. Now we want to do it in under a day. How do we do that responsibly? That's new to us. How do we make hire fire decisions in this new Agile world? They're saying, how do we spend money? What's Agile finance? Those are their questions. And then my best friend, Paul Tacken, consulted with the board of Volkswagen. And Volkswagen is very public now about their Agile wishes. And Herbert Diess, their current CEO, is now giving Ask Me Anythings, Reddit style, to try to attract more open-minded thinkers that don't just want to be told what to do. And they're doing their best. And interestingly, Herbert Diess' stance is exactly the same. The big question is, are we fast enough? If we continue at our current speed, it's going to be very tough. And that is the rationale for an Agile transformation across Porsche, across Lamborghini, all the Volkswagen companies, MAN, Truck and Bus. I don't know how many people are so deep in automotive. Volkswagen owns most of the other brands. Like that's the structure. They own Lamborghini. You buy a Lamborghini, it's actually a Volkswagen. You buy a Porsche, it's actually a Volkswagen. And interestingly, more than half of those cars are actually a Bosch car. So Bosch, the supplier, designs and builds most of a BMW and most of a Daimler Mercedes and most of all the Volkswagen Group's cars. So you're like, are they really different? No. The price point is largely a marketing game. It costs right about the same to make a Ferrari as a Lamborghini as a VW Polo. It costs them about the same. So they restrict the quantity of how many are made to create artificial value. It's a game, which is why I actually love, or at least deeply respect, the person on the far right, who was my CEO. Elon Musk's financial model, and I adore this, is make the thing the best we can, sell it for 20% more than it cost us to make it. Period, flat, end of sentence. No matter what it cost us to make it, 20% more. And use 19 to 20% of that, so all the profit, to make it better. So Elon hasn't taken a salary in 14 years. Like, he makes no money. He is actually broke. I don't know how many people realize that. His share value is huge. He actually lives in budget hotels and wears free t-shirts and the same black jeans and very affordable boots. So he lives like a pauper. I don't know how many people know that. He sleeps in the factory in a sleeping bag. He slept about 10 meters from where I worked almost every night. Like that's who Elon is. That's what he does. That's what he chooses to do. So all the money, 19 to 20% of that 20% markup, is put into improving the product, period. So there's no marketing, there's no assessment of how much could we charge or what's the value. They don't need any of it. There's none of that. That doesn't even exist in the company. Instead, it's real-time metrics, the best we can get. There's a lot of machine learning. There's a lot of machine learning program in this. Real-time metrics, how much does it cost today to make one of these products? And that's why if you go to Tesla.com, the prices of the cars change as often as once a day, which really confuses a lot of people, but they do because it fluctuates with the real-time cost to manufacture the cars. Well, what that also means is when Tesla made the fastest car in the world, currently the Model S Plaid, it costs 1/100th of a Bugatti, which is a French specialty car. Meanwhile, the Bugatti actually doesn't cost more to make than a VW Polo either, by the way, so you know. They use all this elaborate handmade stuff and they pay those people almost nothing. So the overall cost is the same. So it's all a game. Well, Elon doesn't play that game. So you actually get innovation if you want it. If you want arguably the most technically advanced car in the world, at least the fastest car in the world, you can buy it for, it's still not cheap. It does cost something to innovate this fast. The car's $128,000, I think, today. Well, compared to a $3.8 million Bugatti, which is slower and less safe and doesn't have lane keeping assist or any of the stuff that Tesla does, it's a bargain. So Elon's mind is just simply different, and I respect that. And that's all a symptom of his prime directive, and the entire company is run this way. Pace of innovation is all that matters in the long run. And what that enables is a very special type of Agile that I could say addicted to, but I can at least say I really enjoy. And it's what I try to be better at every day. I'm motivated by this. I want to wake up tomorrow and have a significantly more environmentally friendly lifestyle that's also more fun and more advanced. I wish for that. Well, that is innovation, right? So the faster innovation comes, the cooler, I think. And Agile, part of Agile, maps to that really well. Now, there's also this life coaching part of Agile that I don't get. Maybe someone can explain it to me better. People saying, well, I'd like to get more in touch with your feelings. I would love for my team to be happy and for me to be happy on my team. But if my team is slowing down their pace of innovation, we're going to lose the company and lose our jobs. So there's a saying I care about: reality is what exists, even if you don't believe in it. And it's still about pace of innovation if we want a competitive growing company. And so when I operate Agile at Tesla, that's my one goal. And yes, I hope people are really happy, and I'm going to try to inspect and adapt to increase that in service of a faster pace of innovation. So this entire presentation is going to be on that mindset. And if that doesn't resonate with you, then that's totally cool. I respect that. If that does resonate with you, we can probably have a deeply engaging conversation. The incumbent is phase gate process. And this is an actual phase gate process from a huge company, which was a client of mine in the Midwest US. They're global, their headquarters is Midwest. This is their actual waterfall phase gate approval process. They'll start with an overall project plan, and then that's largely frozen. Changing the overall project plan after it's been proposed enters a series of change requests that are difficult to achieve and expensive. And they require a coalition to meet and all agree. And they don't meet that often, and they rarely all agree. So nearly 100% of details are frozen at the overall project plan. Then the marketing plan is made. Now, marketing can't change, not cheaply. Then there's an updated business plan, the financials, and it's a pure play guess, and the success correlation of that plan to what actually happens is about 1%. But they make it anyway. People feel important. Then the validated robust product is made. And in hardware, it's the same in software, by the way, but I'll be talking about hardware. In hardware, the validated robust product is a lot of what people think is the only part you could do with agility. They say, well, we can make this test mule. We can do that with different vendors than we're really going to use, different processes than we're really going to use. We don't test it the same way. It's not going to be used with real customers. It'll be used in a lab environment or protected, groomed environment. Maybe we can do that with Agile. So the current state of thinking in hardware is, okay, I'm interested in doing validated, robust product with agility, but people keep promising me Agile is going to speed us up 2x, 4x, 5x, 10x. If I only use it on my validated, robust product, how am I going to get these great returns? And so this is the disconnect I'm experiencing in industry. Well, then they field test the validated, robust product, and then they create a technical services plan. How are they going to maintain this thing? Anything learned in field test and anything learned from talking to people who might maintain it can't make it back into the overall project plan. That ship has sailed already 2.5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Now there's the manufacturing and supply chain plan. And these folks ask for all kinds of changes. We could make this at 1% of the cost if you change this shape to this way. Sorry, we can't. We've left overall project plan behind 2.5 to 7 years ago. So all of this potential feedback loop is gone, discarded. And you know what that makes? Disengaged people. That's where it comes from. This is it. This is where it comes from. Someone in manufacturing and supply chain that actually loves their job, They actually love their job. They actually love their product and they're passionate about it. And they say, we can make this better. And they're told, nah, ship has sailed 2.5 to 7 years ago. And they're like, I could get mad or I could just detach. I could just detach. I could get really into watching college basketball or whatever their opiate of choice is. And they take that passion out of their job and they put it into something else. That's often entertainment, honestly. And I'll be hardcore about it. I actually think this is where the obesity epidemic comes from. I think it's one-to-one this. And I love all of us in all of our shapes and sizes. I think this has everything to do with Prozac and difficulty living our best lives. I think this is it because we're beaten down at work. You can't bring your innovation, your passion. It's not wanted here. Instead, I want you to do this little siloed piece and don't change much because that'd be too expensive. And I could just cry about this. Instead, I'm an Agile hardware person and I own 4 companies and I try to help fix companies. And I want lots of people to help me if you're game. I think we can really make a better world because this is the problem. And people have known it was the problem for a long time. Melvin Conway in '67 said, if you look at the products that are being made, you can tell the way people talk. Like he would examine a product and say, it's going to be difficult to maintain for this reason. I bet they were using a waterfall approval process and the maintenance professionals didn't get to weigh in until after the overall project plan was locked in. And he was very skillful. Melvin Conway could back calculate the waterfall process of the company in some cases by looking at the product. That's how bad it is. So if you look at a product made by an Agile company, you actually experience the product differently. So I'd like to share what new product introduction is at Tesla. And I'm really lucky, Elon Musk in a factory tour YouTubed enough of this that I can talk about it. And then some famous examples, recent examples, were pushed to the press intentionally. So I can talk about it. There's a lot more stuff that I wish I could talk about, but I will never knowingly break my NDA. I have too much respect for the company. Luckily, some really exciting stuff I can talk about, and this is one. So for those of us that have a software background, and I was software before, I still do some code for fun. For those of us with a software background, new product introduction is basically what we now call DevOps. You think, you code, you think, you code, and then you want fast feedback, does it work? Regression tests, unit tests, integration tests, and hopefully those are automated and fast. You want fast feedback that it worked, and then you want fast deploy. Can I get it at least to 1% of the current consumer group? Can I get this update to them so I can see how it's working in the field? And you want to be able to do fast rollback too, in case it wasn't as awesome as you thought, or ramp it up to 100% of your user base. So that's DevOps, automated test, automated deploy, automated rollback, and percentage deploy. 1% of users get build A, another 1% get build B, and everyone else stays on the previous version. Let's measure the analytics. So that's what you want in hardware too. That's also what you wish you had in hardware. And Tesla's got something pretty close. And it's the most fun I've ever had at work. So I'm very pleased to share this with everyone. Imagine you're in the Tesla factory or one of the Tesla factories. And these are some of the largest enclosed spaces on planet Earth. They're huge. They're huge, huge, huge concrete and metal boxes, mostly. And there's parts shuffling across. If you were to tape a square on the floor, maybe 3 meters by 3 meters, about 10 feet by 10 feet. If you were to do that, or really it'd probably be a hexagon, but in any case, you mark off a bounded area, about 10 by 10 or 3 meters by 3 meters. You could measure parts flowing across it. And I would call that an agile cell, a unit of the factory. You have parts flowing across it. So here's 3 cars in process flowing across any given area of the facility. And in that area, you could count the value steps, the value added steps. For example, heat pumps are taken out of the back of a trailer that's just been pulled over to you, and you set them in and they click in place. And then you might glue a trim, a beautiful trim around the fascia. And then you might install a rivet, a metal like a bolt, on another part of the aluminum body. So those might be 3 value-added steps before these vehicles in progress flow to another area of the factory. Well, the pace of change is about every 3 hours. About every 3 hours, you encounter a part or a car you've never seen before. Please allow that to sink in. At a company like Toyota, that's 2.5 years if it's fast-tracked. Standard is 7 years. At BMW or Daimler, that's 5 years. That's what's called a minor model change. And that's the cadence at which you experience a new part or new car. Typically, these facilities are shut down, usually over the holidays. Everyone is retrained. The machines are retooled. Some new people are hired. And you come back in from the holiday break to experience the new operations, the new parts, the new cars. In Tesla, it's about every 3 hours. That's how different this is. Well, I mean, imagine Agile versus Waterfall, right? We've experienced this. You've probably seen app deploy where you were probably in a team and you pushed something out, and 18 minutes later, you pushed out something a little different because you learned from the first thing. And some of us were also on Waterfall teams where we worked on a piece of software for 18 months or longer, and then it was canceled and never went live anyway. So that is the hardware world right now. BMW, Daimler, Toyota are really interested in agility because they've seen it. At least their executives have. And Tesla's already doing it. And not only Tesla, but Tesla is definitely the fastest right now, far and away the fastest right now. And what's super sad is there's a crop of electric, innovative automotive companies that are using Waterfall. And like Rivian, I love Rivian, this electric truck company. I really like them. I want them to be super successful. They just 2 days ago posted on Twitter a batch of the same parts made using stamp and die, which, well, I guess because I'm an Agile hardware person, you see it right away. It's Waterfall. That's going to be expensive to change because they already made a batch before integrating, and they used a stamp tool and die, which is a relatively expensive part to change. The reason you use stamp tool and die is because it's cheap to make 1 million of the same one. Well, that means you don't want innovation, because to pay for that expensive tool, you want to make 1 million of the same one. And I said, oh, Rivian, that means that part of the truck isn't going to innovate very quickly. You've just communicated to the world your Waterfall intention. You want to make 1 million of the same quarter panel of your truck. That's sad to me because I really like Rivian. I want them to be successful, but it's happening. So even these nimble, cool new companies think, oh, well, now we're at hardware, so we have to do Waterfall. So AgilePDX, please help me. Please help me share the good news. Okay, back to Agile NPI. You're getting new parts about every 3 hours and you've never seen them before. And you're not retrained, well, not usually. Instead, you have a definition of ready. And the definitions of ready, they're cameras, sometimes probes and robots, but usually cameras, and big monitors, super cheap monitors. They're whatever the cheapest 60-inch monitor was at the big box store, right? So these are definitely not custom special things. It's extremely inexpensive high tech all over this company. Like a lot of you, if you wanted to, you could set a miniature version of this up in your garage for less than the cost of a new car. So it is definitely attainable. So you have this store-bought TV connected to a really high quality web camera, and it's running through local servers, just regular servers you'd order in bulk. And that is running machine learning code. So there's a lot of Keras, TensorFlow, CUDA, a lot of ML stack. And what those things do, well, they do a lot of stuff, but a primary function is they enforce the definition of ready. They communicate to you, will these parts likely work? Because you haven't seen them before. So you look for a green light It's not quite as simple as a green light. It's actually a heat map. It shows where things will connect to the interfaces and the definition of ready. But in any case, it's immediately visible. Like you look for a lot of green, right? And then where the green is and where the orange and yellow and red is communicates other stuff. But basically you look for a lot of green. And if there's a lot of green, you know it's gonna work, or it's very likely to work. So your definition of ready passes. So you take these parts and you try to make them work. And this is how the team upstream from you can change as often as they want, because they have a matching definition of done. So nothing leaves any point in this facility until their light turns green. And when it turns green, it's not as simple as a red light, green light. It's actually a heat map and yada, yada. But basically until the DOD passes. When their DOD passes, they know downstream is going to be successful with it. And so you have these matched DOR DODs all through the facility. And that means anyone can make a change at any time. And as long as their DOD passes, the next group's DOR is very likely to pass. And you just continue innovating. So this is steady state, what I've shown here. This is the innovation is happening upstream or downstream from you. Okay, well, what if you're the point of innovation, NPI? It looks like this. You have a small co-located cross-functional development team, and your team is lifting parts and setting them in machines or actually doing operations yourself. You're also on laptops on the floor. You just sit on the concrete floor. There aren't any desks. And you're like calling vendors and you're doing cross-functional work for your unit, for your value-added steps. And we install something that I'll call here a router, and it's controlled by your phone. It's controlled by an app. And the router controls how much of the traffic coming into your area goes to you or anywhere else. And anytime we have a router on the input, we also have a corresponding router on the output. Anytime we do anything to the input, we do it on the output. So you have these routers, and they're robots, and they shuffle. Well, actually, on their most simple, they're pieces of paper, and people pull carts. And they have the paper, it says how many of the carts should go to you versus how many of the carts should go to somewhere else. So cheap implementation. But often, to get faster, these things are robots. And the robots are controlled by your phone or by an app or by a tablet. And they shuttle percentages of parts to different areas. They throttle them. Well, now you've got an empty area, usually in the parking lot, because that's where there's empty area. But maybe you're lucky enough and it's inside. And you tape off another hexagon, and exactly one car gets branched over to this new area. This is what's called a pilot line. And you have a small co-located cross-functional development team. And it's their job to accomplish some mission, to make something better about these value-added steps. So for example, Teslas, just like gasoline cars, have a flap that opens, but instead of putting a gasoline nozzle in, you plug it in, you put an electric charger. Well, if there's ice and rain on a gas car, sometimes that flap gets frozen shut. Well, the same thing can happen to an electric car. And it's awful, whether you have a gasoline or electric car, if you're trying to chip away ice from around your flap when you just want to put energy into the car, whether it's gasoline or electric. So one of the teams said, well, we've got all this electricity and we don't have anything that's going to combust by putting warmth near the charger. So let's heat the flap. Let's put a de-icer on the charge flap. So they did. So they branched off one car. They prototyped this de-icer on the flap. They made it automatic. You don't choose. The car knows what temperature it is. It knows if there's condensation. It says, I think we're probably going to charge soon based on habit, so I should heat the flap. Like, there's no button, right? It uses basic machine learning to guess if it should heat the flap, and it doesn't take that much electricity. And now there's a heated flap on every Tesla. Every Tesla you buy, the charge flap is heated, so it won't freeze shut. It'll just open for you. That's the type of innovation I'm talking about here. So this group sits on the floor, they open laptops, they draw 3D parts in CAD, they call vendors, but most of the time the work has to be done in-house because most of the vendors are not fast enough. So there's 3D printing, there's milling machines, there's cutting with X-Acto knives, and the same people that are on the laptops are doing the basic fabrication melting plastic or machining aluminum. You get cross-functional quickly because you're sitting with a group of people doing all the stuff right there. So you see it and they ask you for help. And even if they just say, can you hold this? By the third time they've done that, you kind of see what's happening. And so you're like, let's switch. And they hold it. And you're like, I sort of see. And after you've done that for a month, like you've learned a lot, right? So people come in thinking they're a software person and they leave and they can build a lot of things. Or people come in thinking they're a mechanic and they leave and they can actually write some pretty good software. So it's a mix, right? It's a cross-functional development team. So that's this area. And they have a DOR and a DOD. And whenever their DOD light goes on, they ship that car, period, end of sentence. There's no phase. There's nothing. It's some people that branched off one car. And for example, the heated flap on the charge port. When one car has a heated flap on the charge port, it's branched back in and it's sold. It's DOD passed. And every car puts itself through all non-destructive certification testing. That's what autopilot actually is. It's called factory mode. Factory mode is automated test on a car. Every car puts itself through every road legal certification and safety test that's not destructive. That's factory mode. Now, someone thought, hey, I wonder if that could assist people holding the speed limit and staying in lane. And then that became autopilot. But that was not the goal. The goal was self-testing hardware. So you can have an up to 100% pace of change. Up to every Tesla is potentially unique. So you can't say every car from January 1 on uses this type of glue. There's no way to enforce that and it would just withhold innovation. So instead, every single car is tracked. Every car has a history. Every single unique car is fully tracked. It has what's called a digital twin of what is every part that was put on that car that when it was made, when it was last serviced, what are the parts on it now? Whether Tesla put those parts on or it came in and it had different parts. Well, they make note of that. Why were the replacements? Then there's analytics as the cars are driving. How has it been driven? Who do we think drove it? What mood do we think they were in? Yada, yada, yada. Yes, the Teslas even track if they think people had sex in the car and how often and where. Like and just like your phone does awkwardly, but yes, all of that. The Teslas do it too. Now that said, the data is highly protected and anonymized. There will never be a nude picture of someone who borrowed your car making love in it on the internet. That will never happen. But Tesla will know that they did. Okay.
Awkward fact.
So one car now is sold with a heated charge port. Tesla won't advertise that yet because it's one car out of all the cars that were made that day. And something that is in my non-disclosure agreement is I can never say how many cars were made a day until Elon says it or someone else says it. So I won't say the daily production size. It affects the stock price too much when people say what that is. But out of all the cars made that day, one of them now has a heated charge flap. Well, this Agile Cell's mission is now to make another car with a heated flap and make another and see, can they make 2 in a day? Can they make 10 in a day? And this is what Elon Musk calls the production ramp. That's what it is. So you have a mix of cars without a heated flap and some cars that do. And it's not advertised until that router branches 100% of the cars over. This pilot line, this Agile Cell, is now handling 100% of the traffic. That means 100% of cars now have heated charge flaps and it's advertised. Everybody else just got them for free. And you've probably heard stories of this. Your 2 neighbors ordered Teslas the same day and one has heated rear seats and the other didn't. But neither one, heated seats, rear seats weren't advertised when they bought them. So someone just got it as a bonus. It happens all the time. And then a month later, heated seats are advertised and everybody gets them. That's what's happening. This is it. It's the production ramp on this lean cell. So some people will get an even better car than they ordered is how that works, right? But you never don't get something you didn't order, or you could return it. What did I want to say about this? Yeah, so that's Agile Cells for new product introduction. Now, most companies don't do this. They do this. And they have a 5 or 7 year cycle. So imagine me coming into Bosch and they're saying, which part of the phase gate process are we going to deploy agility? And I don't even know how to talk to these people. I mean, I'm learning. I'm learning how to bridge the conversational divide because there's no phases. It's not there. It doesn't exist. The other thing is you can't wait on financial approvals either. And now this really twists some brains. This next cell here, this pilot line didn't form because some executive told someone to do it. Someone said, I've got an idea. I think we can heat the charge port. And they just walked over and started doing it. And then someone else walked over and said, can I help you with that? And the next day they came to that same spot again. And then maybe a week later, there's 6 people. And 2 weeks later, they've finished. They've made a car. And a month later, it's in volume. It's now 100%. Like no one told them to do it. That's not how it even works. It's actually self-organizing teams that understand the product goal. Yeah. Now, also part of what makes this work is everyone has financial authority. Everyone, from the day I was hired and everyone else, you can buy a robot, you can buy land, you're empowered. Now you can ask people if you want to feel more safe, is what I'm doing sane. You can ask people. And Elon Musk, the owner, is in the factory. Elon works the factory. He stamps metal parts, he glues stuff together, he sleeps in a sleeping bag in the factory. So you can ask Elon. You can say, Elon, what do you think about this? And since Elon has worked your position and you've worked Elon's position, you understand each other. You don't have to make a report. There's no PowerPoint. I didn't see a single PowerPoint anywhere in Tesla, ever. It did not find one. I'm sure there have been at some point. I did not run into one. Instead, you just say, I think we need to buy these 10 robots. And Elon will say, yeah, I saw that backing up yesterday morning. Okay, do it. Well, I've never bought robots. Oh, well, we'll talk to Tammy. She ordered some an hour ago, so she knows who has a good price right now. Thanks. Like that's it. It's that fast. And people feel really engaged and alive. I've never had so much fun at work. It was like playing Lego all day. And I think, and I like Lego, and I think that's how we're supposed to live as people. I actually think that's genetically our good way to spend our time that we're alive, is play. People that are racing to retire, they're usually racing to retire to do something they're engaged in. They're usually not racing to retire to, I don't know, only sleep. They usually have something that's important to them or they want to do, like paint or learn the guitar, or they want to become a shoe maker or cabinet maker or something, right? They usually have something. Spend time with their grandkids, something. Have grandkids. Go back to school. Well, we like to be engaged. We're really satisfied by that. It's healthy, like physically, mentally, spiritually. And it's why I pointed to the waterfall as I think the trauma of so many billions of people. And this, I actually think, is that awake, alive feeling. Now, my own family has heavily criticized me for saying, don't watch TV, build something you're passionate about. And, or even, I gave a TEDx talk and a lot of people did see it. And I end it with something I'm very proud of and my family's not. I said, what if everyone spent 2 hours a day or even 2 hours a week rapidly solving problems for social good? And that resonated with a lot of people, which was cool. And I really care about that. It resonated with me too. But I said, what if you helped eradicate polio, or helped eradicate rotavirus, or helped create distributed banking applications for the developing world, people who don't have financial security? And I said, and that might be even more important than watching TV or coaching Little League. And some people looked at me Actually, a lot of people loved it. I got a standing ovation, but some people looked at me like, how dare you criticize someone that would coach Little League? Dude, I get it. I love Little League. I love kids. I've got 2 kids. I love them. But if everyone coached Little League and then everyone got rotavirus or polio or something that we could have potentially mitigated, I'd say that was not the only good use of our time. Like, there are other things also that are important. And if you're super engaged at work, I actually think the right answer is make your work a friendly place for your kids. I think if you're super engaged at work, like if you actually love it and you think this is the reason I'm alive, like this is so fulfilling, then your job is to make it quiet enough, because factories can be loud. So make it quiet enough, make it safe enough, make it smell good enough that it's healthy for you. And that means it's healthy for your kids. And I think if you can't bring your pets or kids to work, you're doing it wrong. And so I'm an advocate of working from when you wake up until when you sleep because you love it. And if you don't want to do that, then probably there's opportunity to retrospective on our work. And if we're in a position of influence, make it better. And that's actually my #1 gripe at Tesla. The bathrooms are way too far away. I think this is being addressed in the next generation of factories. The factory I spent most of my time in used to be a Toyota and GM building, and they had a different layout entirely. So Tesla tried to fit what they're doing into a different layout built for a different purpose. And the bathrooms are way the heck far away. And like on day 1, okay, that's inconvenient. On day 7, yeah, that's pretty inconvenient. A month in, you're like, this is ruining my experience. Like that was horrible. So yeah. And yes, I was empowered to spend money. I could have installed another bathroom, and I probably should have in retrospect, or many more bathrooms. That is my #1 impediment in retrospect. I probably should have invested some money in that. I didn't. Anyway, we learn, right? We learn. So this is what it actually looks like. This is a Agile cell. The humans and the big monitors are cropped out of this picture, which is really too bad. But there's a lot of humans and there's a lot of big monitors. And these robots are lifting the big stuff and pressing the big stuff. And what we're doing in real time is reprogramming the robots. Actually, to be honest, the robots actually mostly reprogram themselves. Machine learning is really good. Machine learning is awesome. But you're helping. As a human, you're helping. You're helping the robots not get stuck and reprogram. And you are doing some manual operations because the operations stack is changing about every 3 hours. So it's not all fit for robots yet. And floppy things like cables, like wires, are really difficult for robots to make sense of still. I'm sure another good ML library will come out and that'll be addressed. But right now, if it's a wire or a really bendy thing, probably humans are doing everything about that. So you're snapping wires in, and then you're on the laptop and you're getting the robot unstuck or whatever, cleaning. Here's a quote from Elon. And I think this is a quote about DevOps. He's talking about hardware here, but I think this is what hardware DevOps is: test and compile. Sheer magnitude of the entire production system is hard to appreciate. Almost every element of production is more than 75% automated. Only wire harnesses and general assembly, which are less than 10% of production costs, are primarily manual. And that's the same ratio you want in software for software testing and software deployment. You want humans helping make go live decisions or being able to make rollback decisions. And you want humans doing some types of exploratory testing, but you want huge stacks of robust automated testing. And you want robust blue-green deployment, robust automated A/B testing, robust partial percentage-based rollback. You want all that automated. And that's what this factory is. And that is what is different about Tesla and most other companies, is they've built hardware DevOps. They think of the factory as a hardware compiler. And that was my job. My job was a lot of DOR and DOD, definition of ready and definition of done. Operating agility at Tesla, that's really a lot of it. Which led me to say, automation in software and hardware and management with test in the loop is in fact the answer. Humans are for creative problem solving. Automation is for everything else. These robots, different than most factories, they have flexible hands. We call them end effectors, sorry, I'm slurring my speech, end effectors, the grippers, right? Instead of having one type of rigid paw, which is what you almost 100% of the time see if you see a robot on YouTube or in the real world, because it holds the same part for a million times, right? Well, Tesla has to spend more money on flexible end effectors because they're holding different parts up to every 3 hours. So that's one, and it does cost more. The other is there's interfaces, just like software. If you've got a piece of legacy code, but it has a known stable interface that's clearly named, like financial inputs, you're like, okay, that's probably the financial inputs. And there's an example API call. You're like, okay, I see what to do. I don't understand this piece of legacy code yet. I haven't dove in, but I understand the interface. I know how to call it, and I know what it expects. Well, it's the same in hardware. And that simplification is what some of us call cognitive complexity. Can humans think about it easily? A machine can think about really complex things as easily as really easy things, but humans are still really helpful. So to reduce the cognitive load on the people, the interfaces where parts meet is intentionally made really simple. Yeah, they're strong, they are optimized, but they're optimized in a way that's simple. So a lot of the mating surfaces are flat. They're flat places where these parts, plastic, aluminum, plexiglass, glass, where they touch. So humans can think about it easily. Then humans are in CAD making tweaks, changes, or whole new parts constantly. It never ends. There's no design phase. It's constant, right? And when that new shape is made, the robots then learn how to hold it. It's a lot of ML, but humans guide it or check at least, and then keep putting it together. Yeah. So this is what it actually looks like. If you looked at any of these Agile cells, it's basically this. And at SpaceX, it looks basically the same, but with rockets. I was lucky enough to work with Bill Gates, and Bill started every single meeting I was in with how much of this can we do in parallel? Every single time. I think Bill tried to teach all of us a lot more, but this is what I was able to learn. This is what I was ready to hear. And it affected me. The primary goal was how to cut this big idea, maybe even something that most people think is an intractable problem, but whatever it is, this big idea, how to cut it into lots of small projects that can be executed at the same time without waiting on each other. That was the entire name of the game, and it worked really well. And I think that's what the Spotify model actually is. I think that's why the Spotify model does work so well. And I really respect Henrik Nieberg saying, don't call it a model. It's what Spotify was trying to do and did at one point in time, but they've evolved and they're even different now. Well, all that being true, it's really good and it works. So you split the product into modules that can be executed in parallel. It's exactly what I'm doing in hardware. It's what I did in my own company in 2006, and it's what I did in Tesla. And the trick is that each of these modules don't have to wait on each other. They're parallel executable. That does mean they have their own testing. That does mean they have their own mechanical engineering. Most companies have a central mechanical engineering service, a central software service, a central computational fluid dynamics or centralized procurement. Well, that means everyone's waiting on you. And that's stress on you, and that's stress on them, and it's slow on the product, and it reduces the pace of innovation. So the answer seems to be, I will propose, the answer seems to be massively parallel concurrent execution. And that means each module team has their own mechanical engineering. So they're not waiting on central mechanical engineering. They have their own procurement. They have their own testing. I call it the WIKISPEED model. I was lucky enough to work with the leadership team at Amazon. And Bezos was really strong at that time, and still is, on small team size. And I learned that this has everything to do with something called communication saturation and communication channels. If you have 3 people and they want to innovatively solve a problem, they want to innovate together, there's only 3 communication channels. If you have 4 people, it's not 4, it goes to 6. because you have to explain to each other if you want group innovation. By the time you're at 6 people, it's very difficult to collaboratively innovate. And we already start to create a leader and defer decisions to the leader. Now, what that does is it reduces innovation, because now most of the innovation is up to the leader, or at least to create reports to sway the leader. This is why Agile teams focus on being small. This is the math of it. And this is why 5 people or less innovate. If you want group innovation, if you actually want everyone to contribute to the solution, they're superior innovation. And again, I've said the flavor of Agile I'm interested in is pace of innovation is the only thing that matters in the long run. So for pace of innovation, you want small team size. Well, for team sizes that aren't waiting on each other, you want parallel projects, each with their own Agile team. And here's what that looks like. You split the car into modules. Each module has its own team. They own it from design through build, through procurement, through test. The same people that design it do the manufacturing. I mean, there's no handoff, right? It's the same team. And then there are company as a service teams. You could think of these factories, the Tesla factories, as like a WeWork or a co-working space where you have teams with machines and robots and materials and trucks driving, now electric, trucks driving into the building to directly deliver material to you and pick up what you made. And then there's like a co-working space, baristas and baristas all around every few meters. And morale is super important. So they're very skillful and they'll mix any espresso drink you want, decaf or regular, 24 hours a day. And they try to be world-class, and they are excellent baristas and baristas. And they're 24 hours a day and they're for free for everyone. It's not like managers have free coffee. No, it's for everybody. That also creates this you're empowered feeling. You have a facilities team, and it's their job to grant anyone access that should have it or revoke access to anyone that shouldn't in less than 5 minutes. It's actually much faster than that, but they have a service level agreement. There's the gourmet team, and they provide hot food and they try to make it Michelin star. They really do. That is their goal. 24 hours a day. Well, it's every 3 hours actually, around the clock, hot, delicious food. So you have company as a service, and mostly their job is to make it so you can focus on the work. So they try to remove frustrations. And in a way, they're like an excellent Scrum Master. They're observing you to try to see what would reduce your frustration. So there's laundry service in building. There's a really nice gym and locker rooms, and they try to just make it really pleasant. And SpaceX does the same thing. Here's a sprint review of the Falcon Heavy. The Falcon Heavy is the largest payload rocket, operational rocket that is on the surface of the Earth. And it's actually made out of 3 Falcon 9 rockets. So this extra large project is made out of 3 large projects. And a Falcon 9 project is made out of 9 Merlin engines. And for a company like SpaceX, a Merlin engine is an extra small project. And they make new Merlin engines every day. Elon Musk has famously said, they've never made 2 Merlin engines the same way twice, ever. They're all attempts at innovation. They're agile projects. As soon as 9 Merlin engines are done, you have a Falcon 9. As soon as 27 Merlin engines are done, you have a Falcon Heavy. And so it's massively parallel concurrent execution. SpaceX used to take more than a year to sprint, to design and build a rocket. Well, they've gotten better. It's been 14 years now. SpaceX now builds and launches a rocket approximately every 3 days. They do the same in construction. Here's Giga, Texas. This is one of the largest construction projects of any type on the Earth, depending on how you measure it, right? So by interior volume. The same day the land was bought, it was cleared and leveled. The same day. These pictures were taken 90 days apart. There has never, in the history of humans, been construction this fast, ever. And it's all what we were just talking about. It's massively parallel, repeating patterns. It's designed like a fractal. So there's a module of the building and it repeats. And that module is made out of modules. It's just like good software. It's the same way you architect good software. It's recursive, it's like a fractal. and it's super fast to build and maintain. It's modular plan with massively parallel concurrent construction. I now make my living by doing agile transformations modeled after what I learned in all these companies. That's the sales pitch. I wrote a book. You can download the first 50 pages for free here. If you really want it and you're hard up and you're between jobs, contact me on my Twitter and I will private message you back a free code for the whole book. But at least feel free to take a screen capture now. I think it's a great book. The book on the left is awesome. It's not written by me. It's written by Paolo Samichelli, Scrum for Hardware. And it is phenomenal. The second half of the book is bulletproof. I also put a link to a free, a copy to the entire book for free of Paolo's book. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have hung out with AgilePDX. Please take yourself off mute. I'll turn off my background. And if anyone wants to correct me, comment, ask a question, teach me about what you're passionate about, I want to know.
Joe, we had a few questions that popped up in the chat. One of them was, what's the ideal process for defect rectification?
Fast rollback. So if you're making things in large batch, you treat defect resolution differently, right? Because you have a batch of defects. The alternate method, which many of us are familiar with, is you make things one at a time and test them one at a time. And that's what I'm talking about here. The trick is to make testing super fast so that this one at a time method can keep pace with batch production. And in fact, it's even faster. It's even faster now. So that's why there's such a focus on machine learning of the testing. So the testing is usually less than 1 second. It's machine learning with a lot of processing power, and it's mostly optical, but there are also X-ray tests and laser intrusion tests and robotic flexural physical tests, but it's mostly optical. And in less than a second, you get the results. So you have a fast feedback loop. If the thing you just tried fails, it's like software. You compile, and on some software projects, you get in a very short amount of time, fractions of a second, feedback, it didn't build, it didn't compile. Okay, well, I'll try something different. If your feedback loop is that fast in hardware, you can do it in hardware. And that's Agile hardware versus a test and validation phase before you scale up mass production, because you're trying to have zero variance in mass production because you already finished testing.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to follow up on that as well to find out are you referring to test-driven development then?
Yes.
TDD?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly, because you need that automated test before you build the thing. So yeah, every one of these lean cells starts by first setting up the DOR and DOD terminals, and then you start trying to fabricate stuff or design stuff. Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. For those of you who haven't done mob programming, which is one of the AgilePDX offerings, it's fantastic. They do test-driven development in a mob programming format, so you're getting help at all times. It's a great way to learn about what he's talking about.
That is what I'm talking about. Like, imagine many mob teams with wrenches and bolt guns and welders and laptops, and you have the Tesla factory.
Hey, Joe had a question.
Yeah, sure, Vikram. And thank you so much. Was that Jennifer or Heather a second ago?
That was Jennifer. Hello.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Yes, Vikram, please go ahead.
First of all, this was a fantastic talk. I remember seeing you at Agile DC, if you remember that back in 2013, I think. You were in Agile DC. You had bought the WIKISPEED car, I think, over there.
Yeah, we made a car at the conference in Washington.
Exactly. So I remember that, and it was a fantastic talk.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the customer orientation? Like, how do you involve the customer in the product ideation? I think one of the things Tesla does well is the customer obsession part of it, but I've never read or heard about the actual specifics behind how it does it. So anything you can share?
Okay, I think this is something where companies like Tesla still can benefit a lot more from the user-centered design and customer-centered design practices that Agilists are really good at doing. Tesla does some of this, I think, best in the world, and there's some gaping holes, I think. So here's the best in the world part. First, the analysis of social media. People who do use social media, what are they saying about their Tesla, is so well incorporated into these agile cells, these agile teams, to determine what they should make next. That's why autopilot got forked out of factory mode. Someone on social media found out that a Model S driver years and years ago was super depressed. They fell asleep while driving, and they admitted it was their fault. They didn't have autopilot. Autopilot didn't exist yet. They fell asleep while driving, and they hit a cyclist, and they felt horrible, just like any car. So this is not saying Tesla did a bad thing. It's a horrible thing happened, and it happened to be in a Tesla. Well, that social media tremor was observed, and a bunch of people in Tesla said, oh, wow, factory mode would have prevented that accident. It would have kept the Model S in the lane, even when the driver fell asleep, and we could have alerted the driver guessing that they were asleep by lack of steering wheel holding. And that's why autopilot got made. So what part of the customer obsession is analysis of what's posted on any type of social media or anywhere Tesla can scan. And so there's bulk massive scannings, just like LinkedIn or Google do, to try to search for customer sentiment and customer wish. And Elon will just straight up ask on Twitter for people who use Twitter. He'll say, what do you wish your Tesla did? He'll get 10,000 responses. So that's part of it. The other part that Tesla does really well is also what LinkedIn and Google do really well. LinkedIn, Google, Zing, they have digital twins of every human on the planet. And even if you've never signed up for Zing or LinkedIn, or even if you use DuckDuckGo and never use Google, they still have a digital twin of you. And they guess who your friends are. They guess who you work with and who you used to work with. They guess what type of phone you have and what type of phone you used to have, what laptop you have, and what laptop you used to have, what apps you use, what software you use, what software did you used to use. They keep a continuum in 4 dimensions of everyone on Earth. That's part of what they do. It's called a digital twin. Well, Tesla does the same thing for their cars. So they see when people like to drive fast. They see when people like to chill out. They see when people look like they're struggling to stay awake. They see when people are in traffic, and they can guess when people are agitated or when people are relaxed and happy. And this mass analytics influx drives a lot of the product prioritization decisions. And Tesla does that super well. In fact, I think it's masterful. Now, the aspect that Tesla does not do well, I think, my opinion, where Tesla can learn from a lot of the people right here in this chat, right here in AgilePDX right now, is better product ownership where the customer is the product owner. I would have loved to be able to bring in a current owner that was not also a Tesla employee, so they have a different perspective. A lot of Tesla employees are Tesla owners, but there's Tesla owners that have no aspiration of working at Tesla, right? They probably think differently and experience things differently. Bring some of them into one of these Agile cells or many of these Agile cells and say, we just did this, what do you think? And have a sprint review. I would love that. And that's baked into some frameworks like Scrum. And doing that more often or even consistently would be epic.
Awesome, thank you. Yep, I follow Elon on Twitter, so I've seen those kind of posts. What would you like? And even the SpaceX, the whole Starship series of experiments where they are blowing up things and doing rapid prototyping, that to me is just agility at its core.
Sometimes there's more than one launch a week. Like the sprint pace is so fast. And I went to Boca Chica. So there's a lot of interop between Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company and Neuralink and even OpenAI. So I went to different facilities, and man, it's just so inspiring. Also just because it's so big. You're just experiencing how large the stuff at SpaceX is.
So Joe, when you go into one of these companies that is based on the waterfall methodology, and their entire structure and system is like you showed in the waterfall example. How do you get them to think about even starting to change that model?
This is the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? In fact, this is like the future of the Earth question, right? Like, will we die as a single planet species or live out among the stars, or right? This is like the big question. Well, first, we need to be respectful to ourselves and each other. We can't make anyone do anything, right? So I can't make them want agility. Like that's not the way people work. What we can do is inspire and get people excited. And people who are inspired and excited are suddenly ready to conquer roadblocks that they always could have conquered, but they just didn't feel they had the energy. Well, and I experienced that. We all do. Some days we get out of bed and we're like, I just can't face cleaning the bathroom today. Today is not the day to clean the bathroom. And if someone helped me out on something else that was difficult, so that difficult thing was off my mind, and then got me really inspired and energetic, enthusiastic about bathroom cleaning. Here's a easier, better, fun way that actually fulfills your life goals in cleaning your bathroom. I would probably have an easier time cleaning the bathroom. And the Agile transformation is the same way. So I've got to waltz in and say, look, there is this way better thing, and it's fun, and you can do it. And that's why this presentation exists, because there is this better thing and it's fun and they can do it. And if they get informed and excited, they can choose to start. Well, this brings me to the second point and why I deeply respect Agilists of every stripe for this reason. Let's say you're in a 100, 200-year-old company employing over 100,000 people, and you have entrenched processes, and you're on a 7-year innovation cycle, a 7-year new product development cycle, and you're competing against, I don't know, an app company, and they have multiple releases a day, or you're competing against Tesla, and they have multiple releases a day, or whatever. So basically, you've been completely outmaneuvered, and it's not getting better anytime soon. Your competitor is just getting more and more ahead. Well, what do? I think that's a great time to introduce scaled Agile framework. I'm not certified in it. I don't teach it. I say, please have someone else do it. It's actually not exciting to me. It's too slow. It's an awesome stepping stone for these companies. It lets them allow Agile, at least in the development level, and leadership can keep staying on the same 5-year planning cycle they're on, and they're protected by big room planning and PSI events to shield them from change. Like, from my pace of innovation standpoint, it's revolting. From my pragmatic perspective, it's genius. It's this awesome stepping stone. I don't want to teach it. If I was paid enough, I would do it. And I would use that money to then do the right thing. But it's going to give a lot of Agile coaches a great job. And I love that. And then they're probably going to move towards something more like the Spotify model. And then they're probably going to move towards something probably more like less. And then they're probably going to move towards something like what WIKISPEED does and Tesla does, which I don't even have a name for it yet. Someone name it, and then please let me in on the copyright, because just because I'm not a great marketer doesn't mean I don't have some good ideas. But it's where it's totally flat. You don't have a leadership structure for approval. You actually have improved, empowered teams. I think that's actually called XP. So, but anyway, that's the destination, maximum pace of innovation, right? But if you just threw that into Bosch, they'd have to be really excited. Now they were, and they actually did do it, 40,000 people worth. So they did, but not all 390,000. They didn't turn the whole ship around, not that fast. So there's a great room for things like Scaled Agile Framework or Scrum at Scale or whatever your flavor of the month is. All of those things are way too slow for a company like Tesla or SpaceX, but they're a great stepping stone, I think. So Neil, I think that's the progression. I will say you can flip the bit. You can go straight to the Tesla model. You can, but stepping stones also work. So we can meet people where they are at their current level of enthusiasm.
We have another question that's come in, and that is, how does external testing, for example, government, regulatory, or compliance, fit into an Agile cell's work and for the fleet as the features of a model ramp up continuously?
This is another $1 trillion question, well, multiple trillion. What you have to do is certify each unique product, each model, well, each car in this case, as road legal individually, because every single one is potentially unique. So that's the challenge. To a waterfall company, that sounds impossible because the certification part alone is a year and $100 million. Because they've optimized that way. They optimize it to be a batch event, right? Well, there are other optimizations of that same conclusion. And what you need, the answer is you need road legal compliance testing, certification testing, safety testing, theft prevention testing, warrantyability on each individual car, each individual thing you're going to sell. That's the answer. Oh, wow, how do I do that? That's what's called extreme manufacturing. I wrote a book on it. It's that big a deal. But the short version is you have machine learning, automated testing at design time, at build completion time, and the regulators, the certifying body, comes into your building. That's what's called sprint review. And the first time you do it, it might be once a year, right? Because companies, when they start out, usually aren't that fast. So once a year, you invite the regulatory body in for sprint review, and they either say yes or they say maybe, but I want these questions answered. And so now you know what your next sprint backlog is figure out how to answer those questions. And you go through that cycle, those sprints, as many times as you need to until they say you've answered all my questions. Yes, you passed. Well, then the focus is on a shorter and shorter sprint until the regulators have assigned some people just to your facility. And they just go to they go to your facility every day at 9 o'clock or 7 a.m. or whatever, because you have a sprint review for them every day. And that is the answer. Saab did that in aerospace. They're the first ones to talk about it, as far as I know, in aerospace. Other aerospace companies have done it too, but they're not talking about it, so I don't get to talk about it. Tesla does that. I wish Rivian and Lucid and Lordstown Motors would do that. They're, to my knowledge, not doing it yet. They're still doing batch testing at the end, so that's not very promising for pace of innovation, but I hope that changes. But that's it. That's the answer. You certify every individual unit.
I think that's also part of what made Pfizer and some of the other vaccination companies successful was they brought the FDA into their site to do the testing and to review the testing and do the sprints. That's the only way we got a vaccine in less than 6 years.
Yes. We know how to do this. So to bring it back and applaud some people who've done it before, this has probably happened many times throughout the history of life, the same story. But there's a time that happened just a little bit before I was born with great written records, and it's the same thing, and it's World War II and just after. Mm-hmm. It probably happened in World War I as well, but I don't know. But World War II and just after, and I've talked to some people who were, or some still are alive that were doing it, and this is exactly what they did. And when you read about people making Mustang prop planes and innovating them on the production line, and a new type of bomber turned around in a weekend, a new type from on the drawing board to in manufacturing in a weekend, published case study. Humans know how to do this. We're really good at this. And in fact, those people are, it looks like, really happy. And those were some of the last people to retire. They actually loved what they were doing, and they did bring their kids to work and their pets. And yeah, I actually think this is very near the meaning of life. Like, this is a big deal, I suspect. Yeah, and it's not new.
I have a question around, here's one thing that really strikes me about your talk, and it's something that I think a lot about: the difference and the understanding, the relationship between tradition and innovation. And that you need both of them. Like, one of the things that really struck me about your presentation is you start out describing the deep experience experiences you have to help you recognize what is innovative, what is new, what do I try? And I think sometimes we forget the experience tradition part, like that deep knowledge that allows you to be the flourishing innovator. And I wonder if you can kind of like talk about, you know, that sort of, yeah, the human understanding about what is new is in part understanding what is old.
That was beautiful. I don't think I can add anything useful to that, but other than join Jennifer. Thank you, Kelly. That was awesome.
Good stuff.
I think the difference between what Kelly just said and tradition versus experience. Experience allows you to understand what's happening. Tradition is, like Catherine said, peer pressure from dead people.
Oh,
Okay,
I couldn't
I love
disagree
that.
more, but we can like have that debate later, Neil.
there's more than one perspective on anything, but that was also
absolutely.
intriguing.
But I love that, Catherine. That was awesome. Thanks
All
for contributing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, phenomenal. Folks, it is 7:05.
It is time.
I don't know who needs to go and do what, but I'm honored to have been a part of our conversation. And maybe because our group turned out the way it was and the size it was, I was a little more frank and honest than I usually allow myself to be. And I may regret that forever. But I'm also grateful to you all for creating what I perceive to be a safe space where I could bring even more of myself to work today. I'm grateful for it, and thank you, everybody. If you tweet, please tweet at me or connect with me. Let's Zing, let's LinkedIn, let's Facebook, whatever you like. Let's cheer each other on. I think this Agile thing is important, and I think important things are a lot easier with like-minded people patting you on the back when you need it and asking for a pat when they need it.
Joe, with your permission, I would like to post the recording on YouTube.
Absolutely.
On the AgilePDX channel. So.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure you'll get lots more public.
Well, is there a way to keep it limited just to our group?
No, actually there's not. We're a public entity on YouTube and publish everything for complete consumption. So we don't have a limited publication, but
I'm a massive advocate of radical transparency. I do need to prepare myself for as many people as said, I can't believe you said we're coaching Little League. I mean, I threw out even, I think the Waterfall is the cause of being overweight. Like I threw that, I'm gonna get roasted, but I think it's true. So let's Agile and let's have really respectful, loving lives. And yeah, oh my gosh, I just got to brace myself for that.
Joe, I appreciate that. I think the passion just shows through.
Maybe.
And this is what we need.
I'm still gonna get roasted.
So yeah. And I'm sure you'll deal with it.
I'll do my very best.
Know that you have our support.
AgilePDX. So Portland is a special place on the planet anyway. Those of you who spent very much time there know that. Like sociologically, ecologically, spiritually, community, Portland is pretty special already, as is a lot of towns around it. All around Oregon and up into Washington and Northern California. There's some really special stuff going on. So no wonder when you couple that with agility, you get people who are, you get functional expert business community that's more healthy than in most places. You don't have the same type of shark mentality as I run into a lot on the East Coast. And you don't have so much of the pitch yourself that I run into when we go further south. And I respect it. People further south usually can pitch themselves better than I can. So if it's a pitching war, I mean, I respect their hard-earned talent, but it's also tough. I'm not sure who's my friend and who's trying to tell me who they know for some future deal. I don't navigate that so well. And on the East, it's hard for me to tell who's my friend or who's trying to take advantage of me, because they're trained to be a faster, smarter, sometimes more ruthless person than I'm conditioned to be. This part, the greater Northwest, man, you get this mix of acceptance and business acumen that's really special. So please, let's cherish each other while respecting the other zones and what their strengths are.
Absolutely.
Thank you, AgilePDX.
Thank you, Joe, for coming out. We appreciate it. All right, everybody, we'll see you next month.
Bye, everybody.
We haven't finalized our next speaker yet, but it will be on the same third Wednesday of the month. So look forward to that.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.